There comes a moment in every person's life when the identity they've carried for years begins to feel too small for the destiny ahead of them. A moment when who you were is no longer compatible with who you must become. At first, it feels like a quiet discomfort, a subtle tension between your potential and your habits, between your power and your fears. But slowly it becomes undeniable. The world is demanding a stronger, sharper, more deliberate version of you. The innocence that once protected you has begun to expose you. The softness that once made you lovable now makes you vulnerable to those who mistake kindness for weakness. And the boy inside you, the boy who sought approval, who chased belonging, who hoped life would reward sincerity, starts to fade. Not because you are losing yourself, but because you are finally ready to meet the self you were meant to grow into. This is the moment Machiavelli speaks of. The psychological threshold where you stop asking the world for permission and begin shaping your life with intention. Tonight, we step into that threshold together. Tonight, we witness the death of the boy and the birth of the man. Absolutely. I'll prepare a powerful, long-form YouTube speech script for your channel. Psychtify based on the title, Kill the Boy, Let the Man Be Born. Machiavelli. I will write 5 long parts, each crafted as spoken narration, not academic, deep, cinematic, psychological, and in the style your audience loves, no repetitive patterns. Every sentence has its own weight. If you want more afterward, just say, continue. Part 1. The death of the boy. There comes a moment in every life when innocence stops being a sanctuary and becomes a burden. A moment when softness no longer protects you but exposes you. A moment when the world stops rewarding purity and starts demanding power. Machiavelli understood this transformation better than most. He believed that no ruler, no thinker, no individual could step into their full potential while clinging to the fragile pieces of who they once were. To rise, you must shed. To lead, you must detach. To evolve, you must break your old shape. The boy in this philosophy is not about age. It is about habitual weakness, emotional impulsivity, blind trust, the fear of disappointing others, the addiction to approval, and the fantasy that life will reward you simply for being good. The boy apologizes for taking up space. The boy hopes people will recognize his worth. The boy waits for permission. And in Machiavelli's world, waiting is the most dangerous form of self-sabotage. Kill the boy is a psychological ritual. It is the conscious decision to stop being governed by old wounds, childish expectations, or inherited fears. It is the moment you realize nobody is coming to save you. It is the moment you decide to step into the chaos of the world, not as a victim, but as an architect. This is where the man is born, not through age, but through responsibility, clarity, and strategic mindset. The man does not beg for respect, he embodies it. The man does not rely on validation, he relies on competence. The man does not wait for opportunities, he manufactures them. And this transformation always begins with destruction. The destruction of naivety, the destruction of learned helplessness, the destruction of the inner voice that tells you to stay small because it is safer there. Machiavelli would say, if you want to rule your life, first rule yourself. If you want to rule yourself, first purge what weakens you. That purge is killing the boy. Part 2. Power requires rebirth. Rebirth is not poetic. Rebirth is violent. People rarely talk about that part. When you decide to step out of the boy phase, you experience a psychological death, the loss of familiar excuses, comforting illusions, predictable patterns. You step into a new skin that feels unfamiliar, heavier, sharper. Machiavelli believed that real power begins with discomfort, because discomfort means you are shedding the identity that kept you obedient. It means you are breaking the internal chains that made you predictable. It means you are learning to act from logic rather than fear. The boy reacts. The man responds. The boy speaks to be heard. The man speaks to influence. The boy wants to be liked. The man wants to be respected. And respect is a product of discipline. You begin to realize that strength is not always loud, that authority is not always aggressive, that evolution is not always visible. Sometimes the greatest transformations are silent revolutions occurring inside the mind, where you rewrite the rules of who you are allowed to be. This rebirth forces you to confront your shadows, your jealousy, your insecurities, your fear of failure, your dependence on others for emotional survival. And when you face them, not with shame, but with ownership, you gain something the boy never had: psychological sovereignty. You stop negotiating with your potential. You stop asking the world for permission to grow. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs saving and start seeing yourself as someone who builds. This is the man Machiavelli writes for, a person who chooses evolution over comfort, intention over impulse, and strategy over emotion. A person who refuses to be ruled by the softness of his past rebirth is not a single moment. It is a series of choices that sharpen you. Part 3. Strategic strength. What Machiavelli expected from a man. To Machiavelli, a man was not simply someone who survived adulthood. A man was someone who mastered his environment, not through dominance, but through intelligent calibration. He expected 3 core traits. 1. Emotional containment, not numbness, not suppression, but the ability to feel deeply without being controlled by those feelings. The boy panics. The man evaluates. The boy reacts instantly. The man calculates outcomes before choosing a direction. This is not cruelty. This is self-governance. 2. Selective vulnerability. Machiavelli did not believe in sharing your soul with everyone. He believed in giving trust slowly, intentionally, and only when earned. The boy gives access freely. The man guards access because he knows influence begins with boundaries. 3. Strategic presence. A man's presence is his currency. He does not speak unnecessarily. He does not argue for recognition. He does not display his strength to convince others. He carries it the way a blade is carried beneath a coat, hidden, silent, but undeniable. Machiavelli believed a leader should be both a lion and a fox, capable of direct force when needed, but also masterful enough to win without ever raising his voice. This balance is what separates the boy from the man. When you kill the boy, you stop stumbling into your power and start wielding it. You stop living in reaction and start living in design. You stop asking life to be gentle and start becoming sharp enough to navigate a world that isn't. Part 4. Becoming untouchable. When the boy dies, something extraordinary happens. People lose their power over you. Manipulation no longer works because you know your own value. Abandonment no longer scares you because you no longer seek emotional survival in others. Rejection loses its sting because you stop tying your worth to external acceptance. You become internally self-sufficient. Machiavelli taught that the most powerful individuals are not those who dominate others. They are those who cannot be dominated. This is the essence of becoming untouchable. You are no longer moved by insults. You are no longer destabilized by uncertainty. You are no longer seduced by easy paths or intimidated by difficult ones. Your center becomes anchored, and when your center is anchored, you make decisions differently. You choose relationships based on alignment, not loneliness. You choose actions based on strategy, not impulse. You choose goals based on potential, not fear. You stop being shaped by the world and start shaping it instead. People will notice the difference immediately. Your silence becomes intimidating. Your presence becomes deliberate. Your boundaries become non-negotiable. This is when the man is truly born. Bonus part: the man who emerges after the fire. There's a version of you that can only be created through destruction. Not the destruction of your life, not the destruction of your dreams. but the destruction of the self that was never meant to survive adulthood. The fragile self, the obedient self, the self that waited for the world to reveal its kindness. The boy in you believed life was fair. He believed that intentions mattered more than strategy. He believed that honesty guaranteed respect. He believed that if he loved enough, if he gave enough, if he proved himself enough, people would treat him the way he treated them. But life taught you something different, and painfully. The world does not care about innocence. It responds to clarity. It responds to intention. It responds to a person who knows who they are, what they want, and what they refuse to tolerate. This realization marks the beginning of a deeper transformation. One Machiavelli would describe as the birth of an individual who understands power, not just experiences it. Because before, you lived through emotion. Now, you live through vision. Before, your heart led every decision. Now, your heart informs your choices, but your mind delivers the verdict. Before, you walked into situations hoping for the best. Now, you walk in prepared for every outcome and powerful enough not to fear any of them. This is the man who emerges after the fire. The man built from clarity, not confusion, from intentionality, not impulse, from self-respect, not self-sacrifice. He is not hardened. He is sharpened. He is not detached. He is discerning. He is not uncaring. He simply refuses to pour his life into people who treat him like a temporary convenience. He becomes someone the world pays attention to, even in silence, because his silence carries weight. His words carry purpose. His boundaries carry truth. He does not explain himself. He does not negotiate his worth. He does not chase closure. He does not beg for loyalty. He would rather walk alone with his integrity intact than walk with a crowd that demands the death of his self-respect. This is the version of you who stops being shaken by emotional storms. The boy panicked when people left. The man understands that absence is information. The boy broke when trust was violated. The man studies patterns and chooses differently next time. The boy forgave to keep people close. The man forgives to keep his peace and walks away with dignity. Once this evolution happens, something extraordinary shifts inside you. Loneliness loses its threat, because solitude becomes your strength, your clarity, your kingdom. You become someone who can rebuild himself again and again without collapsing into the arms of people who never learned how to stand on their own. This is where Machiavelli's philosophy becomes real. The world no longer decides your path. You do. Emotional turbulence no longer dictates your direction. Your inner compass, that silent force shaped by your scars, your lessons, your victories, takes over. You become a person who thrives in uncertainty because you no longer rely on stability from the outside. You carry it within you. And with this inner stability comes a different kind of power, the power of patience, the power of choosing your moment, the power of withholding your energy until the environment is worthy of receiving it. People will not understand this at first. They will call you distant, quiet, mysterious, intense. They will project their fears onto your stillness because they cannot comprehend a person who is no longer controlled by external validation. But eventually, they will recognize the truth. You are no longer the boy who needed them. You are the man who chooses himself. And when a man chooses himself, he stops being breakable, not because nothing can hurt him, but because nothing can destroy him. He becomes someone who can lose everything and still remain whole. Someone who can be betrayed and still remain wise. Someone who can walk away without bitterness, without ego, without regret. Just a quiet understanding that not every chapter deserves a return. This is the man forged after the fire, the man Machiavelli would admire, because he rules not through dominance, but through self-command. He is not seeking to conquer others. He is seeking to conquer himself. And in doing so, he becomes unconquerable. And here's the final truth. When you kill the boy inside you, the world will expect a colder man to rise from the ashes. But the man who truly emerges is not colder. He is clearer. He is stronger. He is wiser. He is free. Not free from responsibility, free from the illusions that once kept him small, not free from emotions, free from emotional captivity, not free from challenges, free from the belief that challenges define him. He becomes a man who can burn down his past, honor the ashes, and still walk forward with a steady gaze. This is the final evolution. The evolution that cannot be reversed. The evolution that changes the way you speak, the way you choose, the way you love, the way you lead. This is the man born when the boy dies. Not a colder version of you, but a sovereign one. Part 5. The man you become after the boy dies true. Maturity is not about age. It is about mastery. The man who rises from the ashes of the boy is not harder. He is clearer. Not colder. He is wiser. Not ruthless. He is intentional. He does not confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. He does not confuse love with dependency. He does not confuse kindness with weakness. He becomes someone who can lead without controlling, influence without forcing, and love without losing himself. This final transformation is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming fear-capable. A person who can feel fear and still move, still choose, still act. Machiavelli would call this the highest form of power, a strength not born from brutality, but from self-mastery. And this is the message Psychtify will deliver to every listener. You don't evolve by accident. You evolve by execution, by deliberately choosing the death of who you were, so you can consciously build who you are meant to become. The boy never disappears completely. He becomes a memory, a softer version of you who reminds you where you started, but no longer decides where you are going. Final speech. And now, as this journey reaches its end, there is one truth we cannot ignore. A truth written in every scar you carry, every silence you've endured, and every version of yourself you've had to bury to survive. You are no longer who you were when this video began, because something shifts the moment you confront the boy inside you. Something irreversible, something sacred. You begin to realize that life is not waiting for you to become ready. Life is not pausing while you gather courage. Life is not softening itself to match your fears. Life moves, life tests, life demands. And the boy inside you, the version shaped by innocence, by wishful thinking, by the fantasy that people will treat you with the same purity you offer, cannot lead you through the world you are now stepping into. The boy was necessary once. He protected you. He helped you survive. He gave you sweetness in a world that often lacks it. But you cannot build your future with the emotional tools you used to survive your past. There's a moment when you stop asking the world to be gentle and start becoming someone who can stand even when it isn't. That moment is the birth of the man, and this man, the one rising in you right now, is not defined by coldness, not defined by ego, not defined by dominance. He is defined by clarity. Clarity of what you will tolerate and what you will no longer entertain. Clarity of who deserves a seat at your table and who only came to feed on your energy. Clarity of what you want, what you refuse, and what you will no longer sacrifice to keep others comfortable. This is not the evolution of cruelty. This is the evolution of self-respect. Because the truth is simple. You do not need to be feared to be powerful. You need to be self-directed. You do not need to be cold to be strong. You need to be grounded. You do not need to be ruthless to command your life. You need to be unwilling to betray yourself ever again. And when this shift solidifies in you, When you stop acting from wounds and start acting from vision, your entire life begins to reorganize around your new center. People who once intimidated you lose their power. People who once manipulated you lose their access. People who once underestimated you start watching you differently. Not because you changed your tone, but because you changed your foundation. You walk differently when you're not begging for acceptance. You speak differently when you're no longer afraid of losing people. You choose differently when your value isn't up for negotiation. This is the man Machiavelli wrote for. The man who thinks before he reacts, observes before he speaks, and builds before he boasts. The man who doesn't need attention to feel significant. The man who doesn't need validation to feel secure. The man who doesn't crumble when something ends, because he knows endings are often the birthplace of a better direction. And here is the final truth. You do not become this man by chance. You become him by decision, by choosing discipline even when comfort calls your name, by choosing boundaries even when loneliness tries to seduce you, by choosing yourself even when your past tells you to choose anyone else. You become him by stepping into rooms with your head high, your voice steady, your mind anchored, and your soul unafraid of silence. You become him by walking away from the versions of yourself that apologized for existing. You become him by honoring the instincts you once ignored, listening to the intuition you once doubted, and trusting the resilience you never gave yourself credit for. You become him the moment you stop waiting for the world to grant you permission to evolve. Because here's the secret. No one can knight you into manhood. No one can crown you with certainty. No one can hand you your authority. You take it. You build it. You claim it. Quietly, patiently, deliberately. And if you ever doubt yourself, if you ever feel the old boy whispering your fears back to you, remember this. You're not meant to shrink. You're not meant to kneel. You're not meant to follow a path written for a weaker version of you. You're meant to rise with intention, to move with strategy, to speak with purpose, to love with clarity, to walk with presence, to lead with wisdom. This is where your transformation begins. This is where your past stops controlling your future. This is where the boy's story ends and the man's story finally begins. And as you step into that new story, remember, no one can steal what you build with your own hands. No one can sabotage what you protect with boundaries. No one can diminish the man you choose to become. Kill the boy. Let the man be born, and let the world meet the version of you that was always waiting, just beneath the surface.